Sometimes doing the right thing comes back around in the most unexpected way. This man risked his life to save a pregnant lynx trapped on a cliff. And what she did later will leave you speechless. Standing at the edge, he knew he was in deep trouble. His hands were freezing and he didn't know how much longer he could keep his grip. He wasn't supposed to be climbing alone. But this wasn't a typical day. His kind heart had pulled him into this risky situation. Just yesterday he was thrilled to begin his first real adventure as a ranger in the national park. Roland had been counting the days until he started his new job. But the first week hadn't gone exactly as he'd hoped. The team was friendly enough, but, being the rookie, he got all the tasks nobody else wanted. Cleaning gear, filing paperwork. None of it had anything to do with what he signed up for. What he wanted was to be out in the wild. The park kept track of its wildlife using trail cams across different areas. And one chilly afternoon, a group of them noticed that a whole section of cameras had gone offline. That section right on the cliffs. Getting there would take time, and whoever went would have to camp overnight in freezing temps. Nobody was in the mood for that kind of trip. Everyone glanced around and smirked. They already knew who they were sending. Roland knew, too. He didn't even need to hear it. But what they didn't know was that he wanted to go. He'd been itching to escape the office and get into the mountains. Paperwork was driving him nuts. Before they could change their minds, he grabbed his gear and set off. He wished he could take a horse, but since he didn't know the terrain, and it was getting late, he took one of the park's off-road vehicles instead. He reached the cliffs and checked the cameras. It didn't take long to figure out what happened. A major cable had been chewed through. He got to work fixing it, then took a little time to enjoy the view before setting up his tent. The night was peaceful, but brutally cold, even wrapped in layers. The wind cut straight through. By morning, it hadn't warmed up a bit. He packed up early, ready to head back, until his radio crackled. 2 hikers were reported missing near the cliffs. Roland was the closest, so the team asked him to look around and report back. He drove carefully, stopping here and there to search for any sign of the missing hikers. He scanned the hills and even checked the cliff edges, but the place was empty. Then came another message. The hikers were found. He could return to base. But just as he turned to leave, something caught his eye. There, not far from the cliff's edge, stood a lynx. Roland's heart leapt. He reached for his binoculars, and what he saw next made his stomach drop. The lynx wasn't just there. She was stuck. Her leg was caught badly, and she wasn't moving much. He radioed it in right away, but the team said it would take hours for anyone else to arrive. The lynx looked like she was in real pain. The team warned Roland not to go near the cliffs alone, but he couldn't just leave her. He was young and he'd always had a soft spot for animals. So, ignoring the warnings, he tied his rope to a nearby tree and started his descent. The lynx didn't move as he approached, but before he could reach her, disaster struck. The rope rubbed against a sharp rock and snapped. Suddenly, Roland was hanging on by just his fingers. His hands were numb, and panic surged through him. His decision to help could cost him his life, but somehow that thought gave him a burst of determination. He forced himself to keep climbing. Finally, he felt solid ground beneath him. To his surprise, the ledge where the lynx was stuck was much larger than he'd expected. Even more surprising, there was a trail that led straight to it. He could have walked there, but he was already down, and there was no turning back now. The lynx stared at him as he stepped closer. She didn't growl or run. Maybe the cold or her injury kept her calm, but she didn't seem scared. Her leg was wedged into a small hole, twisted at a painful angle. It was clearly broken. Roland knew she needed help fast. The park had a vet who could drive out, but Roland figured it would be quicker to carry her to the clinic. She was small for a lynx, and she hadn't moved much. He crouched beside her, trying not to show how nervous he felt. She flinched when his hand neared her leg, but still didn't lash out. Gently, he started digging around the hole. Bit by bit, he cleared enough space to free her paw. Slowly and carefully, he slid her injured leg out without hurting her. She was trembling. Roland gently wrapped his jacket around the lynx. It wasn't just to keep her warm. It gave him a little protection, too, just in case she panicked. Then, holding her close, he took the easier path back toward his vehicle. She stayed calm the whole way, but by the time they got there, Roland was trembling. His arms felt like jelly. Between climbing the cliff and carrying her all the way back, he was beyond exhausted. But there was no time to rest. The lynx was curled up tightly, barely moving. Roland knew he had to get her help fast. He radioed ahead to let the vet know he was coming, then hit the gas. When he arrived at the park clinic, a few rangers were already waiting. Their jaws dropped when they saw what he had in his arms. Roland sat anxiously as the vet examined her. Meanwhile, the other rangers shook their heads. They thought he was crazy to bring her in. Now, he was responsible. How would he care for an injured wild animal? Wouldn't it have been easier to let nature take its course? But Roland wouldn't hear it. He believed she deserved a chance, and he was ready to give it everything he had. When the vet returned, she didn't bring the news Roland expected. Yes, the lynx needed surgery, but not right away. She was pregnant. The medicine required for surgery could harm her unborn kittens, so they had to wait. The vet gently set the broken leg in place and gave her safe medication that wouldn't hurt the babies. After that, Roland took her to his cabin, determined to take care of her himself. To his surprise, she adjusted quickly. She ate the food he gave her, and then curled up to sleep. Days passed, and soon she went into labor. Roland stayed by her side as 3 tiny kittens came into the world. Now that they were born, the vet scheduled the surgery. But during her recovery, the kittens would need constant care. Roland stepped in without hesitation. Every 2 hours, he fed them a special formula, barely sleeping. But he didn't mind. Thankfully, the surgery was a success. As soon as the vet confirmed that the medicine was out of her system, Roland brought the babies back to their The reunion was heartwarming. He licked her kittens non-stop, and they nestled against her like they'd never been apart. What touched Roland most was how they treated him. They snuggled against him, too, like he was part of the family. The limbs healed fast. Before long, it was time to let them go. Roland took them back to the cliffs, the same place where he had first found her. He opened the carrier and watched as the little family leapt out into the wild, full of life. The mama paused for a moment, then turned and ran off with her kittens close behind. Roland stood there, smiling, knowing he'd been lucky to be the one who saved them. At the time he had no idea that this moment would come back to him in the most unexpected way. Years passed. Roland was no longer the new guy. He had become a seasoned ranger, but his heart for animals hadn't changed. He still felt most at home when he was out helping wildlife. That's why he didn't hesitate when asked to check the river trails after several days of non-stop rain. The area by the river could flood, and if it did, it could wipe out campsites and put visitors at risk. At first, everything looked okay. The river was high but steady. Then out of nowhere, a deep rumble filled the air. Roland turned toward the cliffs, just in time to see a thick, dark mass sliding fast toward him. It wasn't a cloud. It was a mudslide, and it was coming straight at him. And it was heading straight for him. Roland didn't have time to run, only to act. He grabbed onto a nearby tree and held on with everything he had. The mud roared past him thick and fast. He gritted his teeth and clung tight, not wanting to be swept away. But the force was too strong. His grip slipped, and in seconds, the mud swallowed him up. He fought to keep his head above the surface, but it felt like a mountain of pressure was pressing down on his chest. Debris slammed into him, and sharp pain shot through his body. When the mudslide finally stopped, Roland was trapped. He couldn't move. His arms were pinned, and the weight of the mud made it hard to breathe. His only hope was that someone saw what happened. Maybe a ranger checking the cameras, or someone close enough to hear the landslide. At least, that's what he thought. What he didn't know was that someone had seen him go down. A pair of familiar eyes had been watching from a distance. The Lynx slowly approached the muddy slope, letting out soft, uncertain sounds. Roland's breath caught. It was her, the same Lynx he rescued all those years ago. She kept her distance, but her presence brought him comfort. He felt less alone. But then she turned and disappeared. Roland's heart sank. Tears welled up. He thought she'd left him for good. His last friend gone. But she hadn't abandoned him. The Lynx raced through the trees until she found a group of rangers nearby. One of them had been there the day Roland saved her, and he recognized her instantly. The old scars on her leg confirmed it. He growled and paced in front of them, then turned and looked back, waiting. Didn't take long for the rangers to realize she wanted them to follow. They hurried after her, and when they lagged behind, she slowed down and waited, determined not to lose them. She led them straight to the edge of the mudslide, right where Roland lay buried. His eyes were shut, his breath shallow. But then he heard voices. Help had come. Rangers surrounded him, working quickly to pull him out. The Lynx stood quietly nearby, watching it all unfold. Roland was hurt. He could feel it, but he was alive. All thanks to her. The Lynx he once saved had just returned the favor. He was airlifted to the nearest hospital. With a dislocated shoulder, a broken arm, and cracked ribs. The road to recovery wasn't easy, but just a few months later, Roland was back on his feet and back on the job. If the Lynx hadn't found him, things could have ended very differently. But because he once showed her kindness, she gave it right back. And this time, it saved his life. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We've got plenty more incredible tales coming your